He's an active member of the VFW, the American Legion, and is a co-founder of American Pride, Inc., a writer, coach, public speaker. He lives in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and his awesome wife, Sharon Harmon-Yantis, and 2 bull breed rescue dogs. He is currently working on other writing projects and was recognized with the Army Public Affairs Association's Lifetime Achievement Award in October of 2021. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Rick.
That's awesome.
I'm delighted to be here. I'm surrounded by Marines, so that's a comfortable place to be.
Why?
I like the Marines. I really do. I've been eye-eyed skippered by Marines. So, it was first time I heard it was like, what the hell? But after the first time, it's nicely.
Well, we don't bite.
I know.
Well, hard anyway.
Unless antagonized. Well, what's great about having other veterans, and one, we want to say it's not just a Marine show,
Right.
but we also want to get the experience, and we want people to remember. One of the things that we don't, we have a very long memory. None of us has forgotten 9/11,
Right.
so we're always on guard for that. But right now we got kids getting out of high school weren't even born yet.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Well, and my sweet spot as far as what I like to do, and I've been able to do several times in local high schools and across the country, is get put up on the stage in the auditorium at about 7 a.m. And when the first bell rings, then they fill the auditorium with that period's social studies students, whether it's history or whatever. And the kids come in, and I have 45 minutes to an hour. I do my spiel from my slides, and I tell the story because humans learn from storytelling. That's how we're wired. Right. And I can be engaging and sometimes amusing, but then importantly, also answer their questions. Because if they just get told the story, there's resistance. But if they have the opportunity to ask and challenge and say, well, what about this? Or what about there weren't enough airplane parts? Or even though you weren't in New York, the World Trade Center, it wasn't burning hot enough to melt steel. Well, I can try to answer those things, even though I'm not an engineer and I wasn't in New York. I'm very blessed because I survived a situation in the Pentagon and made it out alive, and made it out largely unscathed, and then found myself in the position to help share my story. And by sharing my story, I encourage other veterans to talk, to share your story, tell your kids, let them know what dad or mom did. And that helps foster our republic, which is very, very crucial to me. But it also is going to encourage that next generation to serve, whether it's in uniform or some other capacity, just to make things better. So,
in our previous podcast, we had an individual we brought that was in the Beirut bombing, and it was the first time he talked about it because he kept it inside. But now he's opened up because he's had the opportunity to tell his story to others, where before he kept them to himself and everything else. But it's important to educate people. My grandkids I tease them. I says, you know what the yellow footsteps are? I said, when you get out of high school, that's where you're going. That's when you finish your training. But
well, no, and the yellow footsteps is a good thing. I have a lot of friends who, as young high school graduates, headed off to either Paris Island or down to San Diego in the yellow footsteps. And I was about that close to becoming one of those, but things were different back then. The fellow who wanted to go join the Marines got me into the recruiter, and I also had some scholarship offers to go to college and be a athlete. And I thought, okay, yellow footprints or college scholarship. I think I'll try that college thing. And
so was that the deciding factor about going into the U.S. Army?
No, actually, the deciding factor about going into the Army was at University of Missouri, where I went to college. They had a freshman must take a PE class. And I was a swimmer. So I would swim 3 hours a day. I would lift weights. I was much skinnier back then and much more hydrodynamic. I fit in the water easily. and I just got stubborn. I was like, no, I'm not going to take a PE class. This is a waste of time. I'm already swimming. And they said, no, you must take a PE class. It's a law and it's a requirement. And the registrar said, well, there's a ROTC map reading class. Will you take that? It counts as a PE credit. So instead of, like co-ed volleyball or bowling or something where people smell nice and look nice, I'd go off to wander in the woods with the Army. And that got me into ROTC. I liked them. They liked me. And in 1980, Mr. Carter and the situation in Afghanistan with the Soviets having invaded, we didn't go to the Summer Olympics. And that was the Summer Olympics that I would have been primed for had I stayed a swimmer.
So that's your era.
Yeah. 1979, started college. 1980.
When the Russians invaded Afghanistan.
And it's an interesting circle as a historian to see, okay, my life was changed by something happening in Afghanistan in 1979, 80. And then 20 years or so later, it's again.
Right.
You know, it's kind of funny because right around that time you were in college, I went to the Mountain Warfare School out in Bridgeport.
Mhm.
And we used to tell the troops that come through is we're training you for Afghanistan, not knowing that, 25, 30 years later that they would, the Marine Corps would actually be actively in Afghanistan
Mhm.
with the mountain skills that's needed. But it's interesting.
I remember 1976, we did Operation Palm Tree at 29 Palms, California. And during our debriefings, that two-star got up there and he was explaining to us that as far as we're concerned, our next war is going to be in the desert. And that's what we were training for. I guess, I don't know how many palm trees they did before that. They must have.
So you brought the cocktails, beach ball.
I didn't say the beach. I said it was going to be in the desert.
You talk about Pendleton Marines.
The sunglasses.
Right.
Well, it's interesting because in World War II, a lot of the ground forces trained out in the American West. The precursor to 29 Palms
Right.
was Patton training troops to take across into North Africa. And they
Right.
did that all through Arizona and the American Southwest. And then the Louisiana maneuvers, that was just huge parts of the South that became an open war game area. That
Right.
They did huge maneuvers with hundreds of thousands of troops. And you got to train for all these different eventualities. And, no matter where you go, it's too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry.
Never right.
Yeah, always the extreme
It's
temperatures.
kind of funny you brought up about the South. It's like, a lot of our landing craft was developed down there.
Higgins boat with the flat bottom. And that was used in the bayous and by folks going after crawfish.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I remember getting done with SOI School of Infantry, and one of the things that inspired me to join the Marine Corps was 9/11. So that was it. I see the towers go down, all that good stuff, and then not good stuff, but joined up. But as soon as I got done with SOI, they're like, "Yeah, you're going to Afghanistan." So we go from what was it, 52 area, I think, 52 area Camp Pendleton to 29 Palms, and then from 29 Palms, where it's like blazing hot, we go up to Bridgeport for like a 2-week, mountain class, warfare class, and all that good stuff. And it was like from one extreme to the other. But yeah, we went to Afghanistan right afterwards. That was Hawaii Marines. So we got activated, and then time to go out over there. So, but that mountain warfare stuff, that was really, really cold. It was freaking awful.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really use much of that when we were over in Afghanistan. So,
what's really interesting is that when you go through those who were alive when 9/11 happened, is where were you? And I'm talking about anybody. Where were you when that happened? And almost everybody that is somebody, if you weren't there, as in your case, like I worked in a place down in Amtech Precision down in Elgin, that when we heard about it, everybody went to the TVs when we turned around and saw the second plane going into the tower. So everybody can turn around, vividly know when that happened, where
they were. Yeah.
school
Prior
library.
to that, I think it was the same phenomenon was with where were you when John F. Kennedy was killed? So that's how significant that event was. Because I remember when in my younger years, everybody talking, I remember I was here, but where were you when John F. Kennedy died? And I don't think there was another event up until 9/11 where people, almost everyone on the planet can say the same thing. Where were you when 9/11 happened? So that was really interesting.
That's a pretty good lead in. Is Ryan, were you inside or outside?
I was inside the building.
Okay.
And the short bio that Rick gave, 22 years dragging the duffel bag around. I had done a lot of time in Europe, some time in Africa, Bosnia, and was selected for a training program in New York City in 1998. I wore a suit and I worked in a PR firm where I learned how the public relations professionals did communications. So that's what I did for the Army. I was an Army spokesman. PAO is the vernacular public affairs officer. And so I'd done a year of this training with a PR firm. And then I ran Army Public Affairs New York. And that was the first time I got aye skippered by the Marines. It was a neat instance. But it was a joint office and we worked and played well together, except for the Air Force.
Yeah, they never played.
yeah.
I don't know how.
And I think the Army and the Marines are the same. If you have a really, really cool assignment where you love it, then the next one really has to suck.
Mhm.
So there I got kicking and screaming, dragged into the Pentagon in the summer of 2000. And I was assigned on the media desk in the Pentagon, answering questions from the Pentagon-based News Corps and the global news environment on anything involving soldiers. So my team and I, we were personnel and human resources. So everything about a person, whether it's height, weight, or misconduct, awards and decorations, women in the military, the Army policy on gays back then, which was don't ask, don't tell, this wide spectrum of people issues. And if you have 1.3 million people in your service and you have a 1 in a million chance of something weird, bad, or ugly happening today, you had a morning session and an afternoon session because that 1 in a million was going to come up a couple of times. And it was being a biological answering service where they would call or email in with, here's our question. ABC News wants to know about gays in the military. Same time NBC or the New York Times is asking about general officer misconduct or awards or whatever. And I led this team in triaging those questions, getting it researched and getting it answered, maximum disclosure, minimum delay. Because our job was to get the information out through the news media to the American people, help inform, build confidence. Now on 9/11, like millions of others, it was a normal Tuesday. I remember it being a extremely pretty day coming into the building.
It was.
Low humidity, clear blue sky. I want to go play golf. I don't want to play hooky. Nope, got to get to work. 7 o'clock, I'm at my desk in the Pentagon. And we had a normal day of just meeting with the other team leaders and the division chief about what we were going to talk about, or if there was a press conference today, coordinating these 3 different teams, because there was my team, which is personnel, human resources. There was ops, intel, logistics, the oil team, and weapons, environment, technology, the wet team. So those are the 3 organizations within our division. And my boss was a gregarious type fella, and the meeting ran forever. And it came out about 8:15, 8:30. We were breaking up, came out, and at my desk, I had a small TV. And it was a kind of a periscope onto the world where I could see what was going on. And there were early reports of a plane having hit the World Trade Center. And first thing, okay, hey, boss, something's going on in New York. And just getting awareness within the office. And then started to make some phone calls because I had worked in New York. I knew that there were people up there that I cared about. Hey, are you there? Are you aware? Called Fort Dix. Likewise, are you aware? Because if you're going to hit the American military, and I hate to say this on a broadcast, but a good time is right after PT and before coffee, because that's when we're all doing something other than what we're supposed to be doing. We're in that transition period. And that was kind of hitting in that window. But I called Fort Dix because it's the local or the closest active duty post to New York. And my counterpart there was aware and awake. Also called West Point because I had done some work with the West Point Public Affairs. Fort Drum, upstate New York, 10th Mountain Division. Hey guys, are you awake? And then, like millions of other Americans, was watching the big screen TV in our team room with other counterparts. And we saw the second plane hit. And it was right then, it went from this is a bad thing, that's an accident, to this is a deliberate act and we're under attack. And that transition was in seconds.
So your perception at that time, and I don't mean to interrupt, your perception when you saw the building on fire, the first building on fire, you thought that it could have been an accident. There's probably possibility, it's most likely probably an accident.
Impossible an accident. And, if I hear something going clip, clop down the road, I'm going to think horse or donkey, not zebra. Because if you know the
Right.
flight paths in and out of New York, the aircraft going into LaGuardia would go straight up Manhattan, take a hard right over the Bronx, go and land into Queens. And that was the flight path. So could something bad have happened? Yeah. In 1942, a B-25 bomber hit the Empire State
Yeah.
Building. Bad things happen to good people. There are a lot of helicopters that are flying around New York, executive helicopters and airport transports. So that's a very busy airspace. Those are very tall buildings. Bad things happen to good people, but it doesn't always take you to okay, this is a deliberate act. But
Right.
seeing the second plane hit, it's either a deliberate act or the laws of physics have changed. And again, what makes more sense? It's a deliberate act.
Right.
Now,
Yeah, I think everybody across the nation thought it was an accident, the first one.
Yeah.
But when that second one goes, it's like, okay, we're
We're under attack.
well, and
Yeah.
the initial reports were that it was a commuter or a small aircraft, not that it was a jet. And it was a very much developing situation. They were reporting live without a lot of information and eyeballs on it. And getting the cameras from Midtown, where all of the news networks that I had worked with up until that summer where I moved down to in summer of 2000, within a 5-block area, you had all of the morning shows, which meant you had all of the studios for all of the alphabet networks, and getting them from there against the press of humanity downtown to see what was going on and
Right.
having eyeballs on it or a camera lens. But knew that it was deliberate at that point. And so that's 9:03. Got my boss's attention again and said, "Hey, sir, it happened again. There's another plane that hit." And we got very busy in that continued making sure other people knew what was going on, because public affairs, we had the access to the outside world that a lot of other offices didn't have. And we had the awareness and the connectivity with the news media that a lot of people didn't have. So us being a portal to share information within the Army staff was important, and other elements in the Army. Again, Fort Drum, calling them back and saying, "Hey, Ken, my counterpart up there, this is not a drill. This is not an accident. Something's going on. Get ready." And I was a major at the time. And if you want to, be the whipping boy, I think, privates and sergeants have more priority and more import in the Pentagon than a major does, because majors are everywhere. They're ubiquitous. But I'm there as a major. There's a new lieutenant colonel, Henry Huntley. He's the team leader for the WET team, oil team, operations, intel, logistics. He sees me, and Henry had been in the building about 6 weeks. He was new to the assignment. And one of the things, there's a diagram, Drew, that in the PowerPoint, if you would, it's a look down on the Pentagon. If you can take a look through that and find us one, not that one. But the Pentagon is a huge building. It's got 17 and a half miles of corridor, and it's five-sided buildings that are kind of nestled inside of each other like a Russian nesting doll. So A-ring is the first 5-sided building. It surrounds a 5-acre inner courtyard. B-ring, a little bit bigger. C-ring is on the next layer out. It's in the middle. D-ring, and then E-ring is the outer ring of the Pentagon. And if you remember, there was a real crappy show post 9/11, and that's a good view of the Pentagon with the different rings. That 5-acre center courtyard in the center of the image, and then those 5 different layers, 62 and a half feet tall at the outside. Each outside face is 907 feet, so that's 3 football fields. Great top-down view. You have south parking is at the top of the image there. North parking is at the bottom part. The Pentagon faces the downtown Washington, D.C. from the river entrance, which is kind of looks like a capital I pointing up into the building from the bottom. And I wish I had a pointer that I could illuminate this with, but it's a huge building, 20,000 doors. The Mall of America will fit inside the Pentagon's footprint with room to spare for another million or so square feet. And well, that's a great place to stop right there, Drew. So my office was at 2E636, second floor, E ring, corridor 6, room 36. And that alphanumeric was not only the address, but it tells you how to get there. And Henry, bless his heart, he said, Ryan, you're the guy who worked in New York. Yes, sir. Come on with me. We have a meeting to go to at 9:30 to talk. If New York wants help, what can we send them? So Henry and I leave for the meeting. I'm following him because he's a lieutenant colonel and I'm a major. And we walk from that green star over on the E ring, the outer ring of the Pentagon, inside the building to where the yellow star is, right there by that red bar. And that area between the red bars, that's the new wedge, wedge 1 that has just been renovated. They had done a multi-year effort to take out asbestos and upgrade it and make it a lot more life safety friendly. And it was being repopulated. They were moving people back in there. But Henry and I got to that space right between 4 and 5 on the E-ring, and it's 9:30. And there's a construction door across the hallway because our wedge, wedge 2, is about to be renovated. So they're putting up they're leaving the door up because just smart construction. I said, sir, where are we going? Oh, it's a conference room off of corridor 4. Okay, great, sir. What's the address? Well, I don't know. Sir, 5 floors, 5 rings, lots of different, who's hosting the meeting? Well, I'm not sure. It's somebody in Des Ops, Deputy Chief of Staff Operations. Sir, we're wasting time. Meeting starts now. We're late. Let's go call and ask. And my ex-wife will swear that I never say, go ask for directions, but we did. And Henry and I walked off. The meeting was actually held off of Corridor 7 in the Army Operations Center. And when we walked in there, as the door closed in this secure vault, the alarms went off and the strobe starts flashing.
Oh, wow.
So you think you've walked into a skiff and the alarms go off. It's a bad thing. Yeah,
Right.
well, the sergeant at the security desk said, gentlemen, you need to evacuate. There's been an explosion. Okay, where? Well, helipad, which is right about where that yellow star is. So in that 5 to 7 minutes that Henry and I stopped, made the call and walked back, that's when the plane hit the building. So about 6 weeks later, Henry slugged me one day when we're both lieutenant colonels and it wasn't abuse. And he said, Faye said, thank you. And you're an ass. And I went, well, thank your wife for calling me an ass, but why? He goes, well, if you hadn't been such a stubborn ass, I would have been wandering around corridor 4 looking for a meeting that was somewhere else. And I was like, okay, hadn't really even thought about that because it was a very busy day. Making it out of the Army Ops Center, got back up to my office, made sure my people had been evacuated. And if you have a mixed office of Department of the Army civilians, military personnel, and some people who have special needs or physical limitations, you got to take those into account. And you got to make sure that they've made it out of the building. I made it back up to our offices and phones were ringing off the hooks. The lights were on, computers were still running, nobody's there. And I ended up playing phone tag, trying to get an outside line just to call my spouse and say, hey, I'm alive. I'm heading out of the building. Every time I would try to get an outside line, a reporter was asking a question. And most of them were, well, they want to talk about some Army policy or something that's inane. And I was like, a little bit busy right now. The building's on fire. Well, can you talk to me about that? Yep, kind of busy. Hang up, get another one. We're up to this picture, which is the outside of the building. That's looking on to corridor 4 and towards 5. 5 is the closest one. 4 is far. The spray of water going across the screen is from the foam truck from Reagan National Airport. They rolled out without instructions, without clearance. They took the only foam-equipped truck off the active runway at Reagan and started heading north as soon as they heard on their squawk box about the hijacked aircraft coming in, because they figured out from what was going on in New York that they had the only foam truck that could help suppress a aircraft fire.
How long did it take them for them to get down there, or like any fire personnel?
Well, there was a fire truck that was right there at the helipad,
Mm,
and it got
okay.
pretty much destroyed by the impact and
Oh,
the flame.
geez.
And there were people trying to fight the fire. The professional first responders, that truck being one of the first within 2-3 minutes.
Wow.
And Arlington was there within, I think, 7 or 8 minutes. And Arlington is the local municipality that had the responsibility. But the Pentagon had its own small fire department and police force, and they were working in concert with others.
Right.
This image is from an Army DOD photographer, but it shows the debris, the aircraft debris, because I run into people and say, oh, there's no debris of any aircraft. No, there were thousands of pieces of aircraft and other things.
Are you talking about the conspiracies?
Oh, yeah.
Theories and
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
Well, and you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and having a question is fine. The frustrating part for me is if I explain to somebody, no, I was there and I'm pretty sure it wasn't a cruise missile and we didn't put a bomb in the building and blow it up, or you know, New York, well, this was a elaborate hoax and they had wired that building for destruction. And if you've played around with explosives at all, you know that doing a electrical or non-electrical firing circuit to drop a building like that, you would have tons of explosives and months of preparation in New York. In New York, if you're in a building working with a non-union crew, that's when a large 30-foot rat shows up on the ground floor,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
exactly.
you know the Teamsters are protesting. So go ahead. How are you going to do it? Well, it was these little small charges. We've seen them on TV. That's fiction. It doesn't work. Another image, and that's later in the day. But it was the plane hit on a shallow angle right at ground level, going from corridor 4 to 5 on that shallow angle, and penetrated 3 rings or 3 buildings within the Pentagon. Killed 125 people in the building.
Wow.
All of the people on the aircraft also died, 184 total, plus the terrorist.
But how many people work in a building total?
About 20,000.
Well, 20,000 people and only 100 and something were
The
killed.
were killed.
Can imagine the injuries and the
209 were hospitalized. There were more than that were injured.
Mhm.
There were those of us who had an injury that was resultant from that day, but just kept going. And well, you know, boo-boo always get fixed.
So they hit at ground level.
Right, pretty much.
So whoever was flying it knew that's what they had to do to get the biggest impact, I would think. It's like what they did when they did in the analysis of World Trade Center, is everything was synchronized where it had to hit to cause the most damage.
Right. And there is a diabolical elegance to their attack. They can't build a bomb big enough. They can't go toe to toe with us militarily. So they're going to steal a peaceful means of conveyance. And just even the timing of it. Okay, we're going to go a Tuesday morning. We're going to go with transatlantic or transcontinental flights from the East Coast to the West Coast with a light load of passengers and a heavy load of fuel. And now why? Because they want to have control of the aircraft, and they're going to use the doctrine of what we understand a hijacking to be. Hijackings up until that point was political theater by and large. We're seizing this aircraft. We want things. We want to negotiate. We're going to land it. We want to use this as a bargaining chip. And even in the air, the hijackers were saying, hey, we're going to land and we're going to negotiate. They had no intention of doing that. They had killed the flight crew as one of their first steps. We're the only people who can fly this plane. And that deliberate act is very chilling. But they figured out a way to hurt us with something that was not meant to be a weapon.
But they, you know, in hindsight, from my perspective, I remember when I went to Prague, Czechoslovakia in 1978, landing in Frankfurt, Germany. Didn't even get out of the plane yet, looked out the windows, and there's a whole bunch of German officers with AK-47s and machine guns of different types walking around that plane.
Mm-hmm.
They secured that airport. that place was secured because they had issues with the Japanese Red Army and the minor Bahnhof game, I think they call them.
Beider Meinhof.
And they had issues. The United States, for some odd reason, during that time, even during that time, prior to 9/11, we had loosey-goosey airport security. I remember walking up, my family walking me to the gate to get on the plane back in those days. And so it was fairly loose in terms of security.
Yep.
This changed it.
Oh, absolutely. It
But
did.
Israel already had those policies in place long ago, because I remember in Athens, it was a very difficult thing to get on an Israeli aircraft. You had to go through all the security. So what are they doing? This is crazy. But compared to our culture.
And that's the balance between a open republic. And in Europe, I served in Germany from 83 until 87 or 84 to 87. And then in the 90s again. Having grown up in Northern California during the crazy summers from 1960 to 1979, where we had a lot of bombings and we had a lot of weirdos coming out of Northern California, Berkeley, Davis, and all the colleges. We had a tough balancing act between being an open society with personal freedoms and a police state. And yeah, 9/11 changed that, sometimes to ludicrous ends, where you had troops who were deploying to Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere, and they were going up to get onto a chartered flight, and they were having to put their assigned weapon through the X-ray machine. They got bayonets on them, they got other toys on them, but okay, put all your stuff through the X-ray machine. Dude, if I'm going to hijack a plane,
One with the military, right?
Yeah. A couple hundred of my closest friends here who can stomp the crap out of me. The security is got to be a balancing act, because we have to be able to function as a people. We've got to be able to have commerce. We've got to be able to move around. The Germans, very surprising, their approach on things. I once flew into Israel back before 9/11. And I was not on a diplomatic passport. I was in civilian clothes, and I was working in that public relations firm. And as I got into the airport, they kept moving me to the right side of the airport in the immigration file. And I finally got stopped, and there's a guy standing in front of me. He goes, "Hi, why are you in our country?" And he identified me by name and rank. And I was like, "Well, I'm here on business." "Oh, really? What kind of business?" And pretty soon I'm in this meeting room with these three fellas who are not identifying themselves, and they're just like, "No, we want to know why you, Major, are in our country. And until you tell us, you're not going to leave here." And I was just there to help out with a company or a group that was having trouble with crisis communications. It was part of my education. That was a good education too. So Israeli security is different. They have.
Oh, I'm not just talking about Israel. What I'm thinking about is from a historical perspective.
Mhm.
We were unscathed in World War II practically. I mean, no one hit our shores really significantly like they did in Europe and in the Far East and so on.
Yep.
So we were it. We were the economy that transformed the world really in a lot of ways. And we had these oceans that kept us away from everybody, and we had this feeling of complacency, omnipotence, I want to say, but I don't know if that's the right term. This total feeling of security that no one can touch us because we're too far away for them to touch. And as a result of that, we were too open in a lot of ways, not thinking about our own security.
Well, there are a couple
which
hundred.
led us to this disaster.
There are a couple 100,000 Japanese who were interned that might disagree with that assessment, and there were also Germans and Italians.
Right.
Some of them legitimately for good cause, and others just because of their heritage and background. It's part of the history.
Right.
And sometimes I worry about, are we ready enough? Are we protecting ourselves?
Right.
Whenever I go into a building or someplace, it's where are the exits? How do I get out of here? Because the sad part about 9/11, talking back to the Pentagon, was people who survived the initial impact and were trying to exit the building in the new wedge. They had moved in, they'd been there for a week, 10 days, and had never gone through the fire drill of how to get out. And now you add in smoke, and we don't have one in this space that I see, but the little light that goes up on the ceiling that says exit over the door,
Right.
totally worthless in a fire because
It's up high.
it's up high, and if it's cut on power, you can't see it.
Right.
Now, one of the things after 9/11, when they did the rebuild and remodel, they put luminescent tapes down on the floor with arrows pointing to the next exit to help people in that scenario. And smoke hoods came out as well, because the bulk of the folks who survived the impact but died were heat and smoke inhalation deaths. And if we could have mitigated that, we could have gotten more people alive out of the building.
Right.
The rest of the day in the Pentagon was a very hot day. It was running back in and out of the building because I made it out and then got involved in going back in and helping carry people out of the building, going back in and getting more medical supplies, ending up with a couple hundred of my friends in the inner 5-acre courtyard where we set up aid and litter teams, search and rescue teams. A Navy officer walked up to me, and at one point she said, "I want your T-shirt. Give me your T-shirt." Well, I'm a big guy. I've been running. I've been carrying things. It's hot, sweaty day. Really? You want my T-shirt? Why? Are we out of bandages? No, just give me your T-shirt. I don't know Navy rank. She could have been an admiral. So I take off my uniform blouse, take off my T-shirt. Here you go. She walks away, dunks my T-shirt in a bucket of water that's by this the center of the 5-acre courtyard, and pulls my sweaty, nasty T-shirt over her head, shoulder length brown hair. So she's looking out with the arm around her face. So it's like, that's all I could see of her face. And I put my uniform back on. I go over and tap her and I go, "Are you okay? What's with the T-shirt?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, flash burns. I'm on search and rescue." Now she's about 5'2", 120 pounds. She's in a knee-length skirt with little low heel pumps, ready to go crawl around in wreckage to try to find somebody, and just doesn't want her hair to catch on fire. And as a Neanderthal, women don't need to be in the military. Nah, that's pretty ballsy.
Changes your perspective about that,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
in the Navy, when their big boats catch on fire, it's fight the fire or swim. And if you're a couple hundred miles out at sea, it's a long way to swim. So they fight fires different than we do with tanks and armored personnel carriers. So
That kind of reminds me, I was at the group Unitas, and we did stuff down in South America, and then we were going to West Africa, and we had one of these Army Intel Tech teams came with us. There was a sergeant first class, and he had 3 or 4 of his troops with them, and they were going over there, kind of hang with the Marines, but do their snoop and poop stuff. We were in the middle of the ocean, and we were on, I think it was Barnstable County. It was an LST. So Bob, and they had no clue about sea life. And the scenario is right at 2200, you have, taps, lights out, maintain silence about the deck. And no sooner did they get done with that announcement, all of a sudden they go, bong, 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 fire down in the engine room and all that. So he jumps up and he gets all paranoid, and we're in the chief's mess. And he goes over there and sees the quartermaster chief, and he's like, "Y'all gotta get in here." And of course, he's kind of comes in there and says, "Hey, we have to go in there." And we're like, "Fuck that." In reality, this is a Navy thing. And all we would do is get in the way of stuff. So it's like, and it's 10 o'clock at night. And if they lose it, we're in the middle of the Atlantic, high seas. There is no ships around. And if they blow it, what are you going to do at night? Yeah.
it's their boat.
Yeah, it's their boat. And the thing is, if it got bad, the chances of you getting on a life boat, it's going to probably be pretty bad because it's really bad seas. So, he's like, "Well, goody." I'm like, but first started looking at me, and because this is the second time he's ever been on a ship, and I've been on some. So this guy's like, "Well, it's not that bad. He goes grab his camera, and I said, "Stop. Sergeant first class, put that away, because the Navy's going to turn around, stick that camera up your tail end. It's bad, but there's nothing we can do about what they're doing." The engine room what happened was an oil line broke above one of the engines, and they were able to rectify that in a very short order. But it's like the concept. We looked at it and we laid back because we've been on ship a lot, and then we know the Navy knows what they're supposed to do.
Yep.
But you're a new guy, just follow our lead.
Okay, just sit back and relax.
But if you bring up the sailor, that the officer, that they do. It's I don't care if you're a pencil pusher on a ship or you're an engineman. They all know how to fight fires.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they have to.
Well, and that was
Floating city.
it was very impressive to me that she was willing to go climb around. And by that time, the fire was so hot, the professional firefighters in all of their turnout gear couldn't be in the building for more than a couple of minutes. It was really a hot, frustrating day. We made it back out at about 3:30 that afternoon. They took this group that had formed up in the center courtyard, and it was an all volunteer effort. Nobody was yelling at us and telling us what to do. They pulled us out and said, okay, we're moving from rescue to recovery, and we don't want to create more casualties. So getting you all out of the courtyard. My boss saw me at that point. I got pulled into the Army Operations Center, and I started doing my job as a Army spokesman. Now, my team and I handled people issues. So first thing, I get put behind a computer and I'm told, okay, let's start doing a casualty list. I was like, great, we're not going to do that. Well, you have to start taking names. I said, no, we don't. Gentlemen, we don't. No, nobody is dead. We don't know that anyone's dead. They're all dust one. Duty status, whereabouts unknown. That's it. End. Until we have positive ID, we have an autopsy, until next of kin are notified, we don't have nothing. We don't have a name on a piece of paper. And I'm getting a lot of senior officer help and guidance. I'm the major there that's been out in the sun too long. I'm starting to lose my temper. And I got some guidance was just put the names on a list. These are suspected dust ones. And another voice chimed in. He goes, okay, you all leave him alone. He knows what he's doing. And oh, by the way, alphabetical. You're not doing officers, NCOs, and civilians. It's one Army. Put them in alphabetical order. Yes, sir. Well, who the hell was that? Well, it's the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. He had heard that discussion and just kind of flitted by. It helped me feel good about that I knew my job. Long, hot day. At the end of it, there's a picture of a corridor inside the Pentagon and a press conference. If you can look for it, please. I got pulled in to be an escort and move the media into the building for the Proof of Life press conference where SecDef Rumsfeld and Mr. White, who's the Secretary of the Army. No, it's on in there. It's
What is it?
Go on down.
That's
Scroll
the
down.
one where the Rumsfeld is in there?
Yeah, Rumsfeld. Yeah. Looks at that. Yep, that's it. So Rumsfeld's doing the Proof of Life press conference. Hugh Shelton, Mr. White, Senators Warren and Levin, and then the MP on the hallway. He's guarding that hallway, and that's what the interior halls of the Pentagon look like. And only problem is I needed to go home, and my wallet and my car keys were down that hallway. So I did what any respecting scrounger will do. I had a clipboard, a flashlight, and found a hard hat. And I got a list of things that were needed for the for the people in my office. And I went up to the MP and I said, hey, I've got to go down and check something off of Corridor 6. He goes, sir, you got to be careful. Things have shifted around. There's no power. Well, I got a flashlight. Okay. Well, just be careful and come back through here. Well, I go tromping down there, and I'm not easily to blend in this scenario, but I've been given a list of, okay, this is where my purse is, this is where that, and I've got an arm of stuff that I'm coming out with, purses dangling off. And I'm lucky that I wasn't arrested or shot as a looter. But I came out of the building about 8:30, 9 o'clock after having done that. We had one, to me, amusing thing. The fellow that I worked with, he was very excited about things. And he's like, well, if you get down to my office, see if my computer's on. And if it is, here's my password, and send email to my home office so I can get some information and check the fax machine. And I'm kind of trying not to lose my patience with him. And he goes, "Oh, by the way, there's a small refrigerator by my desk. And if it's, you have a chance, put the stuff in the trash so it doesn't get funky." And another colonel goes, "Stop it. Leave Ryan alone. Building, because we got a couple hundred dead people in here. So just leave him alone."
Yeah.
The cool thing about that night, got done, got home, got cleaned up, and was told I was emergency essential. So the September 12th picture, please, Drew. I got up early the next morning, drove by myself. Took 25 minutes. It was me and a couple of state troopers on the road. And when I pulled up to the building, it was still on fire. The center section was without power around corridor 3. South parking was basically abandoned. There were a bunch of cars there, but it was not the normal full lot. And the bowl of Washington, D.C., in that picture, you can see the Capitol dome off in the distance because it's right down on the Potomac. And it's pretty sombering.
That's what it is. Very sombering sight.
So I go to park in South Parking. The security guys wave me away and they say, "Nope, you got to park over in Pentagon City," which is across the interstate. Find a place to park. And it's before sunrise. And I get out of my car, walk in the viaduct underneath the interstate. It's a civilian or a pedestrian passage. Get to South Parking, and there's men and women, some of them in BDUs like me, some in flight suits because the Air Force has to play too. Business suits with sport coat and blue jeans. And they're walking across this largely empty parking lot where the cars are there because people can't go home or are never going to go home. And as we get closer to the building, we're going through more and more security and ID checks. And there's MPs and security police with patrol dogs. And we go up to corridor 2, where they have us line up to go through magnometers and have our bags searched and ID checks to go into a building that's still on fire without power, just to do our jobs. Because the Pentagon, like the Navy ship, okay, yeah, you got a fire, but you still have to do it. And the Pentagon never ceased operating during the attacks and in the aftermath. And that determination, that quiet professionalism of, no, this is our place of duty. And what are we going to do? We're going to push around papers and we're going to help other people make better decisions, hopefully. And that's just what we had to do. So,
wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Can you show that photograph of the parking lot? Because I think you mentioned to me that the second day, on September the 12th, you'd gone in and the cars that were in that one parking lot were all of the people that didn't go home.
correct. So in
Tell me where that's at, because I don't see it.
Well, and this is a picture, I think it's from the Washington Post, and that south parking lot is on the right side of this image, and it's all in black. Because this picture was taken, I think, from up on the, what was called the Citgo station. Well, that's the Pentagon Memorial. That's right at ground zero where the plane hit the building. The benches pointing towards the building are for victims on the aircraft. The benches facing away from the building are from people who are in the building. 184 benches. They're arranged by age. So as you're facing it this way, to the left is older, to the right is younger. And it goes back to the 2 young ladies, the 2 infant children who were there with their parents that died.
Oh, man.
Because there were a lot of kids that died during the 9/11 attacks. That's the inner 5-acre courtyard where we set up for aid and search and rescue. People have said, "Oh, that's a picture of you." Yeah, it might be. I can't really tell. But it was very, very hot work. The way the wind was blowing, the smoke, it was doing the caldera effect. So if you're an old cigarette smoker who drank beer, you'd exhale, and it would swirl around inside the beer bottle.
Right.
That's a caldera. It's the same thing that happens with volcanoes, but that was packed full of smoke at different times. And you can see some of the emergency supplies that we had dragged back into that 5-acre inner courtyard in the foreground on that picture.
How long did it take the rescue units to get set up? I mean, with all of the different processes and procedures and everything else, all the beans, bullets, and bandages they needed. How much time did it take them to really get this thing in place?
Some of the elements were there very, very quickly and set up, but then they were told pack up and move back away because there's another plane inbound.
Oh my.
So it was go help people get away, go help people get away, go help people get away. And meanwhile, there were several hundred of God's special little idiots, me and my friends, who, we were hey, you've made it out of the building alive. Congratulations. Quit stopping, running back and in and out of the building. I'm trying to be mindful of time. I do have one more story I'd love to share, and that's the photo of the aircraft, if you can find that one. So this is not a hijacked aircraft, but it's a great image to me because that is a Air Force KC-135 tanker, which is a commercial aircraft with a military identifier. And I believe it's an F-14 silhouette painted with the shadows on it. I made it that morning. I was running back and forth to the building, helping people carry people out, getting more medical supplies, and very hot, very tired. Had been running for a while, slowed down, and I was walking about 50 feet or so from the Corridor 8 or the river entrance. So this is the north entrance. It's facing downtown DC. And the security guards are just waving their arms and yelling at us, get back. There's a plane coming in. There's a jet coming in. Get back. And, I'm too old, too fat, too slow to run. And by the time I stopped, turned, and looked up, there's an Air Force jet at 400 feet and 400 miles an hour, just right overhead. And just the exhilaration and relief that, oh, we're good. We got air cover. We got somebody upstairs looking out for us. And that momentary euphoria of, okay, we're going to be okay. Let's get back into that 5-acre courtyard. Let's go help people. And again, it wasn't just me. It was several hundred folks. Now, the crappy Sophie's choice is the fighter pilots are up there. They're low on fuel. They had launched on alert without missiles on the rails and without bullets in the guns because hijacking was you get up there, you find, you fix, you follow, you identify, and you confirm. And they're being told, oh, by the way, we think that there's a hijacked commercial airliner. We think.
My apologies.
We think that there's a hijacked airliner. Get ready to figure out how to knock it down.
Right.
So how do you turn your $40 million jet into a lawn dart and knock an aircraft down that you think
just bump it a little bit?
Well, and they were having serious discussions about that. But you knock down a suspected hijacked commercial airliner, where does it fall? A church, a hospital, a school?
Right.
That's a crappy damn choice.
What the threat of it just being there was enough.
Yep.
What type of plane was it that hit the Pentagon, and where did it fly out of first?
That's a great question. And normally it was a American Airlines Flight 77. It was a Boeing 777, I believe, or 757. And that's one of those where, I normally go back and make myself smarter. That's part, the gray hair is taking over my brain.
Sure.
Apparently some flew out of Boston, and I think they're probably 3 different locations or something like that.
Yeah, and the one that hit the Pentagon was out of Dulles,
Right.
because they had people from DC that were on the aircraft, and they got the initial nudge that something was amiss. And then there was cell phone communications from people on the plane, from passengers and crew before the impact with the building.
But what's kind of interesting is yesterday I was listening to a podcast, and that's what I was looking for. I wanted to try to find this guy.
We can hear it.
Well, yeah, sorry about that, but I was trying to find a guy's name that said this. But he was an officer in the Canadian Navy, and of course we know Canada and the United States work hand in hand in NORAD.
Yep.
And these guys were about to do an exercise. I'll keep this brief. And this was a training exercise where a missile was inbound, and they wanted to test their responses. So they had multiple organizations, Canada and the U.S., working together. they had 4-star generals of different branches. They were observing. And so the NORAD commander of the United States was a 3-star. His sub was a 3-star Canadian. Up in Canada, they had a 4-star, and his sub was a 3-star American.
Mhm.
So that's how they coordinated this. All of those guys, they didn't go by rank. They just went by, but up in Canada, what happened is they were watching this on 9x12 televisions, and they were watching the building burn, and all of a sudden they saw the second one crash. Same sort of response. And he described this. He goes, we knew at that point. And then they had some discussions. The 4-star generals are up there going back and forth. We're under attack, gentlemen. And the 3-star Canadian general ordered to NORAD in general, we want all commercial aircraft out of the sky. So they kicked in NORAD because they were undergoing a training exercise anyway. So a lot of people were ready, but up goes the planes, and then that's one version of that. And he said, I was there. This gentleman on this interview, I was there. I saw this actually happen. So it was a Canadian 3-star that ordered the NORAD to go and order the aircraft to come down and to get our military aircraft up in the sky. And I went, wow, that was an interesting feature in its own right. And nobody balked it. They just did it. They just implemented it.
Well, and the FAA actually, from my research, and the FAA had more of a role in that, because there was that seam of FAA had been told, hey, there's going to be a major military exercise in the North American hemisphere, and this is the scenario, and they had to keep going, hey, this is real world, no drill. And we're doing a ground stop right now out of Boston. We're doing a ground stop out of Boston and New York. We're doing a ground stop, Boston, New York, DC. Hell with that. Everybody down, clear the skies. And that act right there stopped that platform of attack. And what we don't know moving forward is how many other cells were in position or ready to go. And the data mining of going back and looking at all those passenger lists. And I'm hoping that, the various alphabet agencies who do intelligence work have gone and looked and said, who else was there and what might we figure out? Because they're in the plan that was later uncovered by military forces in Afghanistan. They did want to do other attacks, and they had other targets across the country. But hitting New York, hitting the visible symbols of American or Western power and might, the World Trade Center for economic power, the Pentagon, because it's a very visible symbol of American military might. That was a definite shot across the bow that did a lot to rally different countries and different ideologies that wanted to do us harm.
Well, one of the things is NATO kicked into gear as well.
Yep.
And so, we had a perspective at the time that, hey, the United States pretty much rules over NATO, and they do as we say, but we protect them, that they hide under our nuclear umbrella kind of thing. Well, I understood from this interview that, hey, NATO kicked things into gear and gave us the sense, our military, the sense that, hey, they got our backs.
Yep.
They're watching.
And the
they're
Article
watching
5 discussions. Article 5 is in the NATO agreement that an attack on one is an attack on all.
That's amazing.
And that's very strengthening. Just seeing the different countries doing things to help the United States. Canada taking in all the transatlantic flights and just saying, okay, Newfoundland is now essentially a land-based aircraft carrier. A lot of goodness that happened in the wake of that, and we need to also pay attention to that.
Well, a lot of people, civilian community, different countries, different communities. You mentioned Newfoundland as well. They all stepped up, and they took care of Americans that were pretty much hijacked. They had the land in Gander and no hotels, and they were put in the homes and the schools and churches and everything else, and people fed them. So, that happened all over the U.S. as well as Canada and other places, I'm sure.
Well, my mom was on a cruise in the Greek islands, and hi, Mom, if you're listening. And her story is that the cruise ship, they were very cognizant of Americans. And when she said, no, my son works in the Pentagon, she basically got a dedicated assistant that was going to be there to help her get phone calls in and out if she needed help.
Wow.
And I'm very grateful to them. Getting her back, that was a challenge, but I gotta also confess, I was so busy in the days, weeks, and months afterwards, just other than doing, I'm alive, you're fine, good, got to get back to work. Because it was 38 straight duty days, 14, 16, 18-hour days in a building that was burning for 4 days after the attack.
Wow.
And for weeks and months afterwards, if you had a piece of paper on your desk, and you left it there, came back the next day, you pick it up, and there would be the outline of the piece of paper from the soot, the particulate matter that was in the air. There are several of us that have different PACT Act type claims because, well, were you ever in a burn pit? Yes, it was, this huge building on the Potomac.
It's called the Pentagon. You recognize it?
Yeah, well, and I was stirring stuff, but not the same stuff as a burn pit.
Wow.
A lot of information today.
Yeah, it was quite a bit. And hey, look, I want to say thank you so much for being here to provide us with this incredible history. Every American alive at that time can relate to this. And we can't relate to the specific on the ground experiences that you had, but we can certainly relate to the impact it had on our lives.
Oh, and the goodness is I had enough copies of this to bring. So it's
What's the name of the book again?
9/11 Survivors Stories, Midwest Memories. It's on Amazon. And this was written during the pandemic because we couldn't go do things. I'd been a leadership trainer and coach. I like talking to people, I like helping people, and pandemic can't do those. So I had worked with World Trade Center survivors and others from the Pentagon. And hey, let's write a book. We've always talked about doing this. Everybody's got time. And we worked through it on email and Zoom calls.
Do you have a website?
It's American Pride org, American Pride Inc. org. And I think it's on my bio. The book is $20. All the proceeds go to the nonprofit, and that helps put us into schools and in front of public groups. Subsidizes that outreach effort.
Fantastic.
None of us make any money off of the spines of the book. I've probably bought several hundred books to turn around and give away to folks I chat with. But it's the story of folks, everyday business travelers from the Midwest who were in New York for business trips. And they found themselves in the World Trade Center when something bad happened. Myself and a young lady, her nickname was Blonde Girl. She was a college intern. Her second day in the Pentagon working with us was September 11th.
Wow.
And she was there for a 16-week internship. Shorthand is she did fine. She did great in the Pentagon, but her school said, hey, internship's over, come home. Boyfriend said, hey, internship's over, come home. Mom and dad said it. And she said, no, I'm here, I'm working. A lot of tough moxie from that young lady. Blonde Girl was a nickname because I don't know about the Marines, but without the name tapes, I don't know who I am. So hey, you blonde girl, come here. And it kind of stuck. She is now a successful business woman, finishing up nursing school and a mom of 5 in Ohio. So very proud of her. Her chapter's in here as well. And we also have chapters from people who helped us or we thought did some pretty remarkable things to help other people in the immediacy of 9/11. A travel agent out of Batavia who had travelers on the East Coast and knew, okay, there's no flights going to be happening. How do I get them home? Rental cars. And they're gone. And U-Haul. A lot of different ways of getting people home. So neat stories. It's not an easy read because it can be kind of emotional, but it's 183 pages. It's very accessible. And it helps people understand from those perspectives.
Thank you for that.
So
Thank you. All right. Well, listen, folks, I want to say thank you to all of our observers and listeners that enjoy this podcast. Once again, it's Roger That Chronicles with Mike, Jason, and me, Rick. And so we look forward to our next show. Hope you come and join us. Jason?
And if you like what you hear, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, bell notification, share it, thumbs up button for the YouTube channel, and also helps out with the algorithm. And check out the podcast directly on Apple, Twitch, Twitter, Spotify. And we'd like to thank our producer, 216, or one of our producers at 216, the net, Drew Cappuccino. And and again, we really want to thank our guest for showing. It was definitely a very amazing show, and definitely liked what you had to share and all that. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but
Quite an eye opener.
yeah, it was definitely an eye opener. So
Let them know what the crayons are for again.
Oh, it's because I love my Marine friends, and whenever they get peckish and hungry, it's a good thing to feed them crayons. They're
I
crayon
don't know
eaters.
where this come from, but it started. How long ago would you say that started? I don't know, 1990s or something. It started.
I never
other
heard about
branches
it
of
when
the
I was in.
service. You didn't?
no,
I didn't hear about it until just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Marines eat crayons, and I went, "What?" They brought this one of their Marine Corps balls. I saw this on a table. I went, "What's that?" Some Army guy came in.
It's
and
the
started
different-
distributing them.
different
Uh,
colors
what
to
is
my
this?
emotions.
Hey, see what you get in the airport.
So
Is it paste?
We had too many when
It's
they were
glue.
issued at boot camp for them, so they brought them with. But anyway, if you're a veteran and you haven't found your way home yet, we recommend that you get with American Legion, VFW, Marine Corps League, Navy League, Fleet Reserve Association, AMVETS, and a number of others. There's probably 40 to or more veterans organizations. Find one to make yourself at home. Share your time, get with other veterans, and grow the wealth.
yeah, absolutely. And once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you, and good night.